Welcome to a new episode of Cheaters Always Cheat. Like, subscribe, and share to stay connected.
My wife, who has been my best friend and the love of my life since 10th grade, betrayed me. Now, let me provide some background information. My wife and I started dating in high school, and I first met her when she was dating Tristan, who was also a central figure in this story. At that time, Tristan and I were decent friends, but not particularly close. However, once I met my wife, I quickly developed strong feelings for her. Throughout my entire freshman year, I hoped that she and Tristan would break up so that I could have a chance with her. Eventually, my wish came true, and in 10th grade, I became friends with her and asked her out. Our relationship was one of the highlights of my high school experience, and being with her helped me navigate through the challenges of those 4 years. Since Tristan and my wife had only dated when they were freshmen, he didn't seem bothered by the fact that I was now dating his ex. In fact, he even gave me his blessing when I asked if it was all right. By the time we reached senior year, Tristan and I had become close buddies, and there was no indication that he harbored any ill feelings towards me for dating his ex-girlfriend from freshman year. The three of us ended up attending the same local state college, and I maintained my relationship with my wife while also nurturing my friendship with Tristan. However, there were moments when it was evident that Tristan was attracted to my wife. I would catch him staring at her during parties, and one of my other friends even disclosed that Tristan had expressed a desire to have closeness with my wife. While it bothered me, I understood that my wife is attractive, and it's natural for other guys, including my friends, to find her appealing. As long as they didn't make any advances, I didn't really mind. Nonetheless, it was clear that Tristan was strongly attracted to her, and throughout our years of friendship, he would occasionally make subtle comments about her looks and how fortunate I was to be with her. Fast forward to this year, more than a decade later. My wife and I are now happily married with 2 wonderful children, a son and a daughter. Meanwhile, Tristan recently went through a tough divorce with his ex-wife, which took a toll on him and left him feeling deeply depressed. I wanted to be there for him emotionally, but unfortunately, the demands of my job and my own mental health struggles left me with very little time to spare. However, my wife stepped in and offered her support while he was going through his difficult time. Although they hadn't been particularly close since college, my wife disliked Tristan's womanizing tendencies. But after his divorce and my wife being there for him, I noticed a definite change in their behavior towards each other. Whenever Tristan would come over to hang out with me, my wife would always sit next to him, laugh at his jokes, and even make an effort to ask when he would visit again. I noticed this happening, and it bothered me, but I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want to seem possessive. Plus, I appreciated that Tristan had someone there for him when I couldn't be. The situation continued to the point where my wife would go to Tristan's house to hang out with him while I was at work. It reached a breaking point in September, and I finally spoke up and told my wife that I felt uncomfortable with the amount of time they were spending together. Instead of getting angry or calling me controlling, she apologized and acknowledged that she had gotten caught up in the friendship and promised to respect my boundaries. I mustered the courage to ask if she was attracted to Tristan, and she admitted that she did feel some attraction and that Tristan had flirted with her. However, she reassured me that nothing had ever happened between them. Learning this news broke my heart, and I told my wife that I didn't want her to hang out with Tristan anymore. She agreed and apologized for her actions. For the next couple of weeks, everything seemed fine, except that I started avoiding Tristan. At the beginning of this month, me and my wife had a huge fight about money problems. She's been struggling to find a job since the pandemic started to calm down, and even though there are plenty of job opportunities, she couldn't seem to get hired. My job alone wasn't enough to support our family of 4, so we were under a lot of financial stress. The argument escalated so much that she stormed out and didn't come back for several hours. I didn't ask where she went, but she looked disheveled and had a strange expression on her face. Despite all this, I didn't feel like talking to her, so I didn't question her about where she had been. Now let's fast forward to Thanksgiving. We had invited my whole family and some friends, including Tristan, whom I hadn't spoken to in over a month. Everything was going well during dinner until someone brought up politics. Me and Tristan have completely opposing political views, with him being a hardcore Trump supporter and me being a liberal. Let's avoid arguing about politics in the comments, please. Normally, we avoided talking about politics in our relationship, but for some reason, he seemed determined to discuss it that day. The conversation quickly turned heated, with personal attacks flying around. Tristan yelled at me, claiming that my liberalism was a sign of my weakness and inability to be a man. I asked him where he got that idea, and he replied that I couldn't even satisfy my wife. This completely shocked me, and the whole dinner table, as me and my wife never discussed our bed life in front of anyone. The rest of the dinner became awkward and filled with silence. After dinner, when everyone started leaving, I confronted my wife and Tristan. My wife looked down at the ground, while Tristan stared me in the eyes and admitted to sleeping with my wife on November 4th, the same day we had our big fight. He said she came over seeking advice, and they ended up hugging, with him making a move. He mentioned that she initially resisted and said it was wrong, but eventually gave in, and they did it. Throughout this whole revelation, my wife remained silent and kept staring at the floor. Instead of feeling angry, I was just completely shocked and couldn't find the words to respond. After a few minutes of silence, Tristan simply left, and I was left alone with my wife. She broke down crying, saying it was the worst mistake of her life. She explained that the stress from my job, taking care of our children, and my personal issues that made me distant had made her feel unwanted. Tristan's attention and flirting made her feel good, and she gave in to the temptation. She told me that she had no intentions of doing anything with Tristan, even though he had hinted at wanting to sleep with her when they hung out. She said she was just seeking attention from him while I was absent. She admitted that it was a moment of weakness after our fight that led her to have any closeness with him. I angrily told her to leave me alone, and that I needed time to think. She went to her room, but later came down to try and talk and plead with me. Each time, I yelled at her to get out of my sight. As I sit here writing this, I'm completely devastated. I've never felt such intense pain before. The aftermath of this revelation was like walking through a minefield. I was angry, more than angry. I was furious, seething with a rage that was as potent as it was raw. Not just at Tristan, but at my wife, too. I had trusted her, trusted them both, and they had taken that trust and shattered it. Determined to take control of the situation, I decided it was time for the truth to be aired. If my parents knew about my wife's infidelity, then it was only fair that her parents did too. They were always fond of me, and they never really liked Tristan. They were shocked when I told them. They couldn't believe their perfect daughter was capable of such deceit. Then there were our friends. The news spread like wildfire through our circle. The perfect couple, the high school sweethearts, had a crack in their perfect facade. It felt like a public execution. My wife was furious with me, accusing me of ruining her image, but I couldn't care less. I was done playing the dutiful husband, protecting her reputation, while she destroyed mine. The news reached Tristan's ex-wife, too. She reached out to me with a proposition that was as shocking as it was tempting. She offered to help me get revenge on Tristan. She still hated him. Her divorce was proof of that. She unveiled a secret that Tristan had been hiding. He had committed financial fraud at his firm. His ex-wife had the evidence, and she was willing to let me expose him. We did it. We handed over the documents to the police, and everything snowballed from there. Tristan lost everything, his job, his friends, and his freedom. Seeing Tristan in court was tough. He didn't look like himself anymore. The lively and charming guy was replaced by a man who looked way older than he was, tired and beaten. He had brought this upon himself, and while a part of me was glad to see him pay, another part of me pitied him. He had wrecked my life, and now his life was in ruins. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, a shock to everyone. My wife called me in hysterics, branding me a moron and a vindictive man. She was desperate to go back to Tristan, but now that was impossible. He was in jail. A part of me reveled in her misery. It was a small consolation for the pain she had caused me. In the end, the man who had everything lost it all because he coveted what wasn't his. My wife, who had been unfaithful, was now alone, hated by her parents, shamed by her friends, and abandoned by her lover. I was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered marriage and a broken heart, but I was firm. I would not let this betrayal define me. I had taken control of the situation, revealed the truth, and meted out justice. My heart was still broken, but I was resolute. I would not let them win. They had tried to break me, but they had only made me stronger. I would move on and they would heal, not for them, but for myself, for my children, and for the man I knew I was. Second story. About 4 months ago, my best friend's wife informed me that my wife and her husband were having an affair. My soon-to-be ex-wife was careful in hiding it, but he wasn't. The other betrayed spouse, OBS, provided me with plenty of evidence, including explicit texts and pictures. It turns out the affair had been going on for several years. Once I discovered the extent of the betrayal, I was done with the relationship. I found call logs and texts dating back to when I was working long hours to earn my engineering degree. There were nights she claimed to be having girls' nights out, but I was actually at home taking care of the kids. It turns out her friends were all cheating on their husbands and covering for each other. OBS chose to reconcile with their spouse due to financial limitations, but I made the decision to leave my cheating partner. I consulted a lawyer and made a plan before confronting her. Once I had everything in place, I kicked my wife out of the house, changed the locks, divided our accounts, and served her divorce papers. She has no claim to the house, and I had movers send her belongings to her parents' place. Since our separation, she has faced difficult times. She had to find a place to live with college-age roommates and started working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Today, both my parents and her parents felt the need to have their own intervention, urging us to reconcile for the kids. However, the truth is that our children are doing just fine. They spend the majority of their time with me. Our parents have been hearing her sob stories while she downplays the fact that she was having an affair with my best friend all along. According to her, she's really sorry, so everything should be okay. They criticized me for publicly exposing her affair and kicking her out, calling it immature and vindictive. What's more, they believe that maintaining contact with the betrayed spouse, or OBS, is inappropriate, despite the fact that we have been friends with her and her family for more than 10 years. They even accused us of having an inappropriate relationship without any evidence whatsoever. Let me set the record straight. We are not engaging in any closeness. We are not kissing, dating, or anything of the sort. We simply help each other out with childcare, grab coffee, and chat. For instance, I save her a plate of food when her kids stay for dinner, and a few times a week she's in class. OBS doesn't have much family support in our state, since her own family has distanced themselves from her after her husband was caught doing it with minors, including OBS's underage cousin, and embezzling money from real estate investors, right after he was exposed for cheating. After learning about his affair with my soon-to-be ex-wife, she decided to come forward. Several other women have also come forward and pressed charges against him. On top of that, he's involved in real estate development. While he was in jail, his panicked investors discovered that he had been misusing funds. He spent approximately $500,000 on unauthorized repairs done by unlicensed workers, evaded taxes, took shortcuts, and charged for work he didn't actually do, used his business card for personal expenses unrelated to work, and skipped necessary building approvals and inspections, among other things. It's quite ironic that he'll be released from jail around the same time he becomes eligible for senior citizen discounts. What's even crazier is that he had been getting away with this for over a decade, and everyone believed he was making a fortune because he seemed competent in his job. Even his investors were taken by surprise. I'm at a loss for words. I feel completely shattered and betrayed once again. Even though I've made it clear that it's over and tried my best to minimize contact, she just refuses to accept that and now has everyone on her side. But I'm not taking her back. She's only sorry because she got caught, and her affair partner ended up in prison and lost a ton of money. She's not sorry for betraying me for years while making me look like a fool. I worked hard for years to build a good life for both of us, and this is how I'm repaid. If she hadn't been caught by his wife, she'd probably still be sleeping with him in hotel rooms or his car. My soon-to-be ex-wife also claims that the betrayed spouse, OBS, exposed her out of revenge and to steal her life. Now, she's acting like she's saving herself for when I take her back. OBS's life has been a complete train wreck She and her kids were left with no money and almost became homeless after that jerk had all their assets seized. I've done what I can to prevent that from happening. She has lost most of her family in the process. None of this was her fault, and she was just as shocked as I was. She's been a true friend and a source of support throughout all of this. Wow, that's quite the saga. To reflect on this, let's keep in mind that loyalty, trust, and respect are the backbone of any relationship. The moment these fundamental values are compromised, the relationship loses its essence. The original poster's wife not only cheated, but maintained this deceit for years, all the while enjoying the fruits of his hard work. It's interesting how, after being exposed and facing the consequences of her actions, she suddenly feels remorse. But is this true remorse, or is it just regret that she got caught? And more importantly, should the original poster accept her back for the sake of the kids or the sanctity of marriage? Let's remember that a marriage without trust is like a car without gas. You can stay in it as long as you want, but it won't go anywhere. Staying together for the kids might seem like a noble decision, but what lesson does it teach the children? That it's okay to disrespect your partner and get away with it as long as you show some regret when caught? This man worked tirelessly to provide a good life for his family. In return, he received betrayal. He showed incredible strength in standing up for himself, moving on, and also supporting OBS, who was another innocent victim in this tangled web of deceit. Remember, folks, karma always has a way of coming back around. This story serves as a reminder that our actions have consequences, and sometimes they can be severe and far-reaching. But what's your opinion? Should the original poster consider reconciliation, or should he stay firm in his decision to move on and rebuild his life away from the shadows of betrayal? Let's have a healthy discussion in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories and discussions. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, remember to always respect your relationships, stay honest, and do the right thing, because you never know when karma might come knocking.